You mentioned the grade inflation, and I think in one spot in the book you talked about the 50% rule. So can you
Mhm.
go into that? Like, what are they doing with the
Sure.
grades?
So one of the things that I do in Failure Factory is that I show people what to look for in their school systems that are
Okay.
indicative of major academic problems. And the school system's trying to make it easier to pass and easier to graduate because the kids are not getting the academic outcomes that they need.
Hmm.
And I go through school board policy, which is probably the least sexy topic in the world. Nobody goes around at dinner parties talking about school board policy, but it's
But they
monumentally
should.
important. Yeah, they
Hmm.
should. It's monumentally important. So what I do is in the book, in a chapter, I go through some of the things for you to look for in your local school system that are indicative of major problems. And one of them is the 50% rule. And I cut the little section out of the school board policy in Baltimore City
Hmm.
and I stick it there so you can see what it says and try to see if you can find that in your district. And what the 50% rule says is that a student cannot get below a 50%, half credit, for a semester or marking period grade. So that student can never show up to school, hand in no tests, hand in no homework assignment, take no quizzes, do literally nothing. And they won't get a 0, they'll get a 50. And the reason the school system put the 50% rule into play is because they wanted more kids to pass. Anyone listening to us right now would say, well, if you want more kids to pass, perhaps you should educate them better. Well, that's not what the school systems do.
Yeah.
They manipulate the data and they make it easier to pass. They change the standards. They make it easier to graduate from high school. They do things like the 50% rule. So what we're seeing is 70% of the kids are graduating, but 10% of the kids are proficient in math. You know, we talked about that earlier in your program. Well, many people may have been saying, well, how the hell can that happen? Well, it happens because of things like the 50% rule, where the kids are getting pushed through the grades, they're not learning what they're supposed to learn, and you end up graduating 70% of your kids, but 10% of them are proficient in math. And in Failure Factory, there's other things like the 50% rule that you can look at, that you can look for, that are indicative of problems. Because if you have that in your school system, it's because your academics are falling. And the reason I know that is because not every Maryland school system has it. Baltimore City has it. Howard County, which is west of Baltimore, Carroll County, which is northwest of Baltimore, they're higher performing school systems. They don't have the 50% rule because they don't need it.
Hmm.
Baltimore City needs it because without it, that 70% graduation rate would be significantly lower.